this is Wayne Blau. Look, the first step in managing yourself is very simple. You need to know what it is you're trying to accomplish, all right? We talked about this in great detail in the August 2013 issue. If you had it, go back and reread Building Your Dream Business, because that's the key. If you don't know where you're going, how do you know you're going to get there? But once you know where you're going, now you got to figure out how to get there, all right? And one thing that you have to work on is you have to figure out how to reach your goal without working so hard. One of the things that happens all the time, and it happens whenever I'm sitting down and working with clients and we're doing consulting, and we reach a point at some point where they start to whine. Oh, business owners don't whine. Sorry, they start to complain that, Wayne, these are great ideas, love to do them, but how in the heck am I going to have time to do all this, including all the stuff that I need to do to keep this business running? And it's like clockwork. I've never worked with anybody that did what we asked them to do, which is to pick one thing every month and improve it and to work on improving their business, that they don't run into this wall. They run into this wall because why? Because we're busy. Every business owner is wearing 17 hats. I joke that business owners have ADD by nature, all right? And it's because we got to put out so many little fires, and that's the key. That's the problem. And unless you can learn how to manage yourself first, you're not going to ever succeed. I've seen it. I've seen it 1,000 times where why does one business dominate a niche and the other 100 people in that niche get the scraps? And that's today's world. In today's world, one or two businesses are going to get 80 to 85% of the business. They're going to get 80 to 85% of the sales, and the rest of them are going to be just getting the scraps. You want to be that person? You need to be able to get what's important. All right, you need to get what's important done. That means you need to know what's important, and it means you need to finish it, and you need to work on it, which means you need to eliminate, delegate, or outsource anything that doesn't get you working towards your goals. I had a client that worked on this who basically quadrupled their income because he put together a systems manual, he delegated, he outsourced, he did pretty good. I used to be the CFO at Magnolia Coca-Cola. I got this from first-hand experience. When I was sitting down working, when I first started, I was trying to get everything done. I was working 7 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day, and falling farther behind until I figured out, this is wrong. And I sat down and actually put together what I needed to do, trained and delegated to my employees, and keep it open. We're going to be, I think our November issue is probably going to work on employees. But keep your eyes open, either November or December. Let's talk about some key things, though. What is it you need to know? There's some key points that I put in this article. And the first one I flat out stole from the 4-Hour Workweek by Timothy Ferriss. If you don't own that book, you ought to get it. I don't see me ever getting a 4-Hour Workweek, but he's got some great ideas in there. And one of his key principles in there was being effective is not the same thing as being efficient. All right? There's two truisms that he writes down that are really good. Doing something unimportant really well does not make it important. That's an important point. Think about that. I'm real good at doing tax returns, but that's not necessarily important for me reaching my goal of helping my clients make more money. So we put systems in place and train people to take that over. Think about something in your business that you're doing. We'll get to that in a minute. Second point that he brings up in his book is being time consuming does not make a task important. In other words, just because a task takes a long time to do doesn't mean it's important. All right? It just means it takes a long time to do. So you need to figure out what you're doing. So, for example, one of the things I use in our Michelle, in our interview this week, talked about that when she's dealing with customers. When she's coaching a lot of her clients, a lot of them think they can do their bookkeeping. We see it too, and most of them are wrong, from our experience, by the way. They think they can do their bookkeeping, but it takes them so much longer than us because that's what we do for a living. All right, but they think that's important. They're going to save a few bucks, but what she gets them to understand is that, well, if you're spending 2-3 hours a week doing that, that's 2-3 hours a week you're not using to hit your main goal, not to sell a customer, not to increase profits. Just because you can do it, and it takes a long time, does not mean it's important. So what Timothy, I forgot his name, in the 4-Hour Workweek is trying to get across, and one of his main points is what you do is infinitely more important than how you do it. Efficiency is still important, but it's useless unless you're doing the right things. All right. A second law that I want to use is Pareto's law. Pareto's law is everybody knows it, the 80-20 law, and basically freedom from futility. Pareto's law says basically 80% of results come from 20% of inputs. He was a Italian monk that looked at his garden, that's why he gets credit for it, and found out 80% of his crop was coming from 20% of his plants. And then he noticed that that basically came about from almost anything. I've seen it worse than that. I've seen where 95% of a business's profits is coming from 5% of their customers or 5% of their products. Unfortunately, on your employees, 80% of the work's probably being done, important work is probably being done by 20% of your employees, okay? So it's important, everything you do in business and in your personal life should be analyzed through the lenses of two questions. Which 20% is giving me 80% of the output, and how much of my time am I spending on that? If I'm not spending 80% of my time on that 20%, you're wasting it. And you know, which 20% of the sources are resulting in 85% of my income and my sales? So the question you're going to ask, am I working on the right things? Which leads me to the next thing, how are you going to know? The third point that I put in this article is Peter Drucker's main management law. Peter Drucker was a management guru, wrote a ton of books, but one of his most famous quotes is, what gets measured gets managed. All right? It's really simple, really so simple it's ridiculous. So I talk about, and we talked about it in last month's issue also, about setting up your dashboard. You need to be able to measure those things that are important. And they're so important. I give an example that I use all the time. When I was at Magnolia Coca-Cola, I was the CFO there, and we had routes that were needed to be settled at the end of every night, and they were behind. They were making errors. All I did was I took a big wall and I put up a big whiteboard, and I put their names down on the side, and I posted 2 numbers every day: how many routes they did and how many errors they made. And every day I came in and I just posted I posted those 2 numbers next to each name. By the end of 2 weeks, there was a dramatic increase dramatic time decrease in how long it took, and a dramatic decrease in errors. Why? Because we measured. That's all it took. We're competitive by nature. If we measure things, things improve. So that's law number 3. Law number 5 is called Parkinson's Law. It's the 9-to-5 job. Basically, it says that every project will expand to reach the amount of time I allocate it. It's the power of deadlines. We do it here. I mean, we had a major deadline recently where, corporate extension deadline. And I sat down on September 1st and went, how in the heck are we going to get this done? Because we had 50 that we needed to do in a period of 10 days, 12 days. Well, it got done. Why does it get done? Well, let me throw it in your example. If you're going on vacation in 2 days, and you got a week's worth of work, and you can't go until you're done in 2 days, it's amazing how much gets done. Or if a client calls you and they need it, why? It's the power of deadline. Because what happens under Parkinson's Law is if I give you 24 hours to get something done, the time pressures forces you to get rid of everything but what's important. Now, if I give you a week to do that same project, wow, at 6 days I've just given you to turn a mountain into a molehill. And oh my God, if I give you 2 months to do the same project, God forbid, I just gave you something that you can turn into a mental monster if you ever get to it. What's more likely going to happen is you're going to start it 2 months from now, 2 days before the deadline. But that's neither here nor there. So what we're talking about is combining those 4 laws. Remember what they were. We're talking about being effective and efficient on what's important, all right, which happens when you concentrate on the 80% that's important, which happens when you measure it, which even more likely to happen, you're more likely to spend your time on the 20% that's important when you put a time limit, because you eliminate all the fluff. So the best solution is to combine all 4 of those and to work on those critical tasks that contribute most to your income and schedule them into your plan. All right, it's very important. Remember, simplicity requires ruthlessness. I mean, you really do need to be ruthless. That means if you're the manager of the company and we do 600-700 tax returns. If I'm going to spend all my time with every person, I can't do a good job on any of them. And I'm definitely not doing a good job on the 20% that are bringing in 80% of my time. As the business owner, I should be spending all my time bringing in business and making sure that I actually fulfill what I promised, all right? So we're going to talk about, make sure you watch the video and read the article on managing your company's most valuable asset. We're going to talk about that very much. But the key question, I promised you a key question you need to work on. Every time you start to work on something, ask yourself this question. Is this task essential for growing the business of my dreams? If it isn't, figure out a way to delegate it, outsource it, or eliminate it. Doing that by itself and remembering the 4 rules we talked about, go back and read the article, study them, and think about them. Trust me, it'll transform your business. Hey, until next time, let's make this our best year ever.